It happened at 2:17 p.m. on a Tuesday afternoon in March, the moment Adam Schiff realized he'd made the worst mistake of his political career. Not his first mistake, mind you. That would be a very long list. Multiple volumes. Probably need its own presidential library, except the library would be full of lies instead of books. Not even close to his biggest lie. Again, very competitive field there. The man had been lying professionally for 8 years. He'd turned it into an art form, a career, a brand. But this was the mistake that would end him. The moment he decided to attack Kash Patel, the new FBI director, thinking he was just another political appointee who could be bullied with vague accusations and knowing references to concerning intelligence that Schiff had supposedly seen but couldn't share because it was classified. The old playbook, the one that had worked for years, except Kash Patel had spent 6 months getting those same documents declassified. Every single one. Every leak Schiff had made to CNN and MSNBC and the New York Times. Every lie he'd told about having direct evidence of things that never existed. Every time he'd stood in front of cameras with that serious, concerned expression and misrepresented classified information to mislead the American public. All of it. Declassified. Cleared for public release. Ready to go. And now, with 52 million people watching on C-SPAN and every major network with Twitter and Reddit and TikTok already clipping and sharing the moment in real time, Kash Patel was slowly pulling a document from a red folder stamped "Declassified for public release" across the top. And Adam Schiff's face was doing something faces don't usually do on camera. It was going through an entire journey in about 3 seconds. From smug certainty to confusion to dawning horror to that special kind of pale that happens when someone realizes they've been caught. Really caught. Completely caught. Caught with receipts. The Senate Intelligence Committee hearing room had gone completely silent. Not the respectful silence of careful attention, not the anticipatory silence before a dramatic reveal. The uncomfortable, everybody, hold your breath, I can't believe this is happening silence of watching someone's entire career implode in real time on national television. Because everyone in that room, everyone watching at home on their televisions and phones and laptops, everyone refreshing their social media feeds to see the clips that were already going viral. Even though the moment was still actively happening, everyone could see what was written on Adam Schiff's face. Oh shit. Oh shit. Oh shit. The realization that he'd spent the last 20 minutes attacking Kash Patel's credibility and integrity and fitness for office, using his standard playbook of vague insinuations and references to classified briefings, and that serious, concerned voice that had worked so well for so long. And Patel had just sat there, quiet, calm, taking notes, with that slight smile that should have been a warning, but Schiff was too arrogant to see it. Because Adam Schiff had been doing this for 8 years. The concerned intelligence expert, the protector of classified information, the man who'd seen things he couldn't tell you about, but trust him, they were very concerning, and you should be very worried. It had worked on cable news. God had it worked. Hosts would lean forward with concerned expressions and ask if the American people should be alarmed. And Schiff would nod gravely and say he couldn't say more, but yes, they should be very alarmed. And then he'd leak more details to his favorite reporters as soon as the cameras turned off. He'd done it with Russia. I've seen direct evidence of collusion. Except he hadn't. There wasn't any. Mueller spent 2 years and $40 million and found nothing. But Schiff had said it. On television. Hundreds of times. Direct evidence. More than circumstantial. Plenty of evidence. Abundant evidence. It was all there, he promised. He'd seen it with his own eyes in classified briefings. Lies. All lies. But how could anyone prove it? The briefings were classified. He'd done it with the Nunes memo, called it reckless and false and misleading, released his own counter-memo saying Nunes had fabricated the whole thing. Except the Inspector General later confirmed Nunes was right about everything. But by then, the news cycle had moved on, and nobody held Schiff accountable. He'd done it with Ukraine, coordinated with the whistleblower, then went on TV and said he'd had no contact, lied about it, got caught, issued a weak correction through a spokesman, moved on. He'd done it with the Trump-Zelensky call, actually read a fabricated version into the congressional record during an impeachment inquiry, made up quotes, invented dialogue, called it parody when he got caught. But the damage was done. The clips were out there. People who didn't watch closely thought it was real. He'd done it with Hunter Biden's laptop, knew it was real. FBI had verified it. He'd been briefed, and he went on television 3 weeks before an election and called it Russian disinformation. Organized a letter from 51 former intelligence officials saying the same thing, all to suppress a story that might hurt the Democrats. 8 years of this. 8 years of leaking and lying and manipulating and using his security clearance as a weapon and a shield. And he'd never been held accountable, never been caught, never faced real consequences. Until now. Until he decided to attack Kash Patel, former prosecutor, former National Security Council official, former House Intelligence Committee staffer who'd actually written the Nunes memo, someone who knew exactly what Schiff had done, who had access to all the same classified information, who had the authority to declassify it, and who'd been waiting for this moment. Patel had the receipts, all of them, phone records, meeting logs, transcripts of briefings, timelines of leaks, communications between Schiff's staff and reporters. Every lie documented, every leak traced, every manipulation exposed. And now, with the whole country watching, he was about to show them. Not theories, not insinuations, not, "I've seen concerning things I can't discuss." Actual documents, actual evidence, actual proof that Adam Schiff had spent 8 years lying to the American people. The red folder sat on the table between them. Patel's hand rested on it gently, almost casually, like it wasn't the most dangerous thing in that room, like it wasn't about to end a career. But to understand how we got to this moment, to this frozen second where a classified folder became a loaded gun, we need to rewind. Not far. Just 2 hours. Back to when Adam Schiff still thought this was going to be another performance. Another chance to position himself as the serious, concerned intelligence expert, standing up to political appointees. Back to before he realized that sometimes when you lie long enough, someone eventually brings the receipts. And sometimes those receipts are declassified, and everyone gets to see them. Chairman Richard Burr of North Carolina banged the gavel 3 times. The sound echoed through the ornate Senate Intelligence Committee hearing room. This hearing will come to order. We're here today for a special session examining FBI leadership and addressing concerns that have been raised about the politicization of the Bureau and intelligence community more broadly. He looked down at Kash Patel seated alone at the witness table. No lawyers flanking him, no handlers, no prepared statement stacked in front of him. Just Patel, a red folder, a yellow legal pad, and a water bottle. Director Patel, thank you for agreeing to testify before this committee. Patel leaned into his microphone. His voice was calm, professional. The voice of someone who'd testified before Congress dozens of times and knew exactly how the game worked. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm happy to address any questions or concerns the committee might have. The gallery behind him was packed, every seat taken. Media representatives crammed into every available space. This was the story of the day. The new FBI director, controversial Trump appointee, facing his first major congressional grilling. And sitting in the front row of the committee members, looking like a cat who'd just spotted a very slow mouse, was Senator Adam Schiff of California. Except he wasn't actually a member of this committee anymore. He'd been the chairman of the House Intelligence Committee for years, built his entire reputation there, made himself into a cable news fixture, then won his Senate seat and moved to other committees. But he'd been invited back today as a special consultant, given his extensive background in intelligence oversight. Everyone knew what that meant. The Democrats wanted their best attack dog, their most experienced Russia investigator, the guy who could make political appointees squirm. Schiff looked ready. He'd been preparing for this, workshopping his questions, coordinating with friendly reporters about what clips they'd need. This was his specialty, taking down people he considered threats to democracy. He thought he was the hunter. He had no idea he was the prey. Before Chairman Burr could even finish his opening remarks, Schiff was leaning into his microphone. He couldn't wait. Never could. Always had to be the center of attention. The smart guy in the room. The one who knew things you didn't know. Mr. Chairman, if I may, I'd like to address some serious concerns at the outset. Burr sighed. He knew Schiff. Everyone knew Schiff. The senator from California is recognized. Schiff adjusted his glasses, did that thing where he looked down at his notes seriously, then looked up at the witness with grave concern. It was his signature move. He'd perfected it over years of cable news appearances. Director Patel, I want to thank you for being here. I hope we can have an honest, straightforward discussion about your qualifications and the direction of the FBI under your leadership. Pause for effect. Let the word honest hang in the air, with all its implications. I've spent years on the House Intelligence Committee. I've reviewed your record extensively. Your writings, your public statements, your documented loyalty to one individual over loyalty to the Constitution and the rule of law. Another pause. The reporters were writing this down. This would be the soundbite. I've also been briefed on intelligence matters that raise serious questions about your judgment and your fitness to lead the FBI. I cannot discuss the specifics in open session sources and methods you understand, but I can say that the patterns I've observed are deeply disturbing. There it was, the classic Schiff move. I know things you don't know. Trust me, they're very bad. I'd tell you, but it's classified. Just trust me. It had worked for 8 years. Why would today be any different? As someone who's dedicated his career to protecting our intelligence community and our national security, I have to tell you, Director Patel, that I have serious reservations about whether you should be sitting in that chair. He sat back, looked at the cameras, concerned, serious, patriotic. The Democrat side of the committee was nodding. The Republican side was rolling their eyes. The media was typing frantically. Everything was going according to script. Patel had been listening quietly, taking notes on his legal pad, his face neutral, professional. When Schiff finished, he looked up, that slight smile still there. Senator Schiff, thank you for those concerns. I appreciate your years of service on the Intelligence Committee and your dedication to oversight. His voice was respectful, deferential even. I'd be happy to address your concerns about my qualifications and judgment, but I'm curious about something you said. You mentioned intelligence briefings that raised questions. Could you be more specific about which briefings you're referring to? Schiff's eyes narrowed slightly. This was a trap question. Had to be. But he couldn't see where it was going. Director, I think you know which briefings I'm talking about. I'm not going to compromise sources and methods by discussing classified material in open session. I would hope you'd understand that. Patel nodded. Of course. Protecting sources and methods is absolutely critical. I agree completely. Long pause. He was writing something on his legal pad. So, I'm sure you'd never leak classified information to the press, or mischaracterize intelligence to mislead the public? Because that would be the opposite of protecting sources and methods, wouldn't it? That would be weaponizing your security clearance for political purposes. The temperature in the room dropped about 10 degrees. Schiff sat up straighter. Director Patel, I don't appreciate the insinuation. I'm not insinuating anything, Senator. I'm agreeing with you. Protecting classified information is paramount, so I'm sure you've always handled it appropriately. Another pause. Patel picked up his water bottle, took a sip, set it down carefully. Now you asked about my qualifications and judgment. I'd be happy to discuss that. But first, I think we should establish baselines for what constitutes good judgment in handling classified information. Would you agree? That's a fair place to start. Schiff didn't like where this was going, but he couldn't object without looking like he was dodging. I suppose that's reasonable. Excellent. Patel reached for the red folder. The folder looked innocuous, just standard classification markings, but the stamp across the front in bold red letters read, Declassified, Approved for Public Release. March 2025. Patel opened it slowly, deliberately, like someone shuffling cards before dealing a hand of poker where he knew he had 4 aces. Mr. Chairman, may I enter into the record a series of declassified FBI investigative documents regarding media leaks during the Russia investigation. Burr looked at the documents, looked at Schiff, looked at Patel. He was Republican enough to enjoy what was coming, but experienced enough to know this was going to get messy. Without objection, so ordered. Patel pulled out the first document, held it up so the cameras could see the declassification stamp clearly. This is a declassified summary of the FBI's investigation into unauthorized disclosures of classified information during the Russia investigation, specifically leaks about what became known as the Steele dossier before it was made public. He set it down on the table, looked at Schiff. Senator, you remember the Steele dossier, I assume? Schiff's jaw tightened. Of course. It contained serious allegations about It contained fabricated allegations from a source the FBI determined was unreliable and likely a Russian agent himself. The FBI knew this. You knew this from your classified briefings. Yet somehow in December 2016, detailed information from that dossier started appearing in media outlets. CNN, New York Times, Washington Post, all citing anonymous congressional sources. Patel pulled out another page. This one was a timeline, dates and events. This is interesting. Let me walk through it. December 9th, 2016. You attend a classified briefing on the Steele dossier. You and 7 other members of the Gang of 8. The briefing includes details that were not yet public. He ran his finger down the timeline. December 12th, 2016. You appear on MSNBC's Meet the Press Daily. That evening, you have a 15-minute phone conversation with a CNN producer. We know this because the FBI obtained your phone records as part of the leak investigation. Schiff's face was starting to change color, just slightly. But if you were watching closely, you could see it. December 13th, CNN runs a story citing Sources close to the intelligence community, with details that match your briefing, almost word for word. Patel looked up from the timeline. December 18th, you appear on CNN's State of the Union. That afternoon, you have a 23-minute call with a New York Times national security reporter. December 20th, the New York Times runs a story with additional details from the dossier. Details that again match what was in your classified briefing. He set down the timeline, picked up another document. These are the FBI's findings from their leak investigation, cross-referencing the timing of your media appearances with subsequent news stories. The pattern is quite clear. Schiff tried to interrupt. Mr. Chairman, this is an outrageous fishing expedition. Patel talked over him calmly. You were briefed on December 9th. Content from that briefing appeared in media within days. You had documented contact with reporters at CNN and the New York Times during that exact time period. The leaked information matched what you'd been told in the classified setting. He looked directly at Schiff. Senator, did you leak classified information about the Steele dossier to media outlets in December 2016? Yes or no? The room was completely silent. Every camera was on Schiff. Every reporter's pen was frozen above their notebook. Schiff's mouth opened, closed, opened again. Director Patel, I don't discuss my private conversations with journalists. That's not an answer to my question. Did you share information from classified briefings with reporters who then published that information? Yes or no? I have always operated within the bounds of my authority as... Still not a yes or no answer, Senator. Let me be more specific. Did you provide information that you learned in the December 9th classified briefing to journalists at CNN and the New York Times information that then appeared in their stories? The silence stretched on. 5 seconds. 10. 15. Schiff couldn't say yes because that would be admitting to a felony. Unauthorized disclosure of classified information. But he couldn't say no because Patel clearly had evidence. Phone records, timelines, proof. So he did what he always did when caught. He got indignant. Mr. Chairman, this is clearly a political witch hunt designed to... Patel smiled. Not a smug smile. Almost a sad one. Like he'd expected exactly this response. Senator, you can characterize it however you like. But the documents speak for themselves. You had access to classified information. That information appeared in the press shortly after you had contact with reporters. The FBI investigated and found a pattern. These are facts. He pulled out another stack of documents. But let's move on. Let's talk about your claims of having seen evidence of Trump-Russia collusion. If Schiff had been uncomfortable before he was approaching panic now, because this was his biggest lie. The one he'd told hundreds of times. The one that had made him a hero to the resistance and a villain to conservatives. The one that was completely, provably false. Patel pulled out what looked like a compilation. Pages and pages of transcripts. This is a collection of your media appearances from March 2017 through November 2018. I had my staff go through every interview, every cable news hit, every Sunday show appearance, where you discussed the Russia investigation. He flipped to a marked page. March 2nd, 2017. Meet the press. Quote, I have seen more than circumstantial evidence of collusion between the Trump campaign and Russia. End quote. Another page. March 20th, 2017. CNN. Quote, there is evidence that is not circumstantial and is very much worthy of investigation. End quote. Another. May 15th, 2017. MSNBC. Quote, the Russians had help from the Trump campaign. End quote. He kept going. Page after page, quote after quote. Schiff claiming to have seen evidence, direct evidence, compelling evidence, evidence in plain sight, abundant evidence. I counted them, Senator. 227 separate instances where you claimed on television or in print interviews to have seen evidence of collusion. 227 times. He set down the compilation. And yet, the Mueller report, after 2 years of investigation and $40 million in spending, found no conspiracy or coordination between the Trump campaign and Russia. None. The FBI investigated and found nothing. The Senate Intelligence Committee investigated and found nothing. No one found this evidence you kept saying you'd seen. Patel looked at Schiff with something that might have been pity. So, where was it, Senator? Where was this direct evidence you told the American people about 227 times? Schiff's hands were gripping the edge of the table now. His knuckles were white. Director Patel, if you're suggesting that I misrepresented, I'm not suggesting. I'm stating a fact. You claim to have seen evidence that didn't exist. You said it on national television, hundreds of times. You led the American people to believe there was proof of a crime that never happened. New document. This one Patel handled carefully, like it was particularly dangerous. This is the transcript of the House Permanent Select Committee on Intelligence Gang of 8 briefing from March 1, 2017. The classified briefing you attended the day before you went on Meet the Press, claiming you'd seen more than circumstantial evidence. He looked at Schiff. This transcript was classified for 8 years. I declassified it last month. Specifically for this hearing, would you like me to read what the FBI actually told you in that briefing? Schiff's face had gone from red to pale. That briefing covered sensitive sources. It's been declassified, Senator, properly, through the appropriate channels. The sources have been redacted, but the content is now public. So I'll ask again, would you like me to read it? Or would you prefer to tell the committee yourself what you were actually briefed on? Dead silence. Schiff wasn't going to volunteer anything. Patel read from the document. Quote, FBI has investigated multiple contacts between Russian individuals and persons associated with the Trump campaign. To date, investigators have found no evidence of coordination or conspiracy. FBI continues to investigate and will report findings as they develop. End quote. He looked up. That's what you were told. No evidence of coordination or conspiracy. Those were the actual words used in your classified briefing. And you walked out of that room and went on Chuck Todd's show the next day and said you'd seen more than circumstantial evidence of collusion. Senator Schiff, did you lie to the American people about what you'd been briefed on? Yes or no? The room had descended into controlled chaos. Republicans on the committee were leaning forward. Democrats were frantically conferring with staff. Reporters were typing so fast their keyboards sounded like machine guns. But Schiff was frozen, staring at that transcript like it might burst into flames and take the evidence with it. He couldn't deny it. The document was real, declassified, on the record. The FBI had told him there was no evidence, and he'd gone on TV and said the opposite. He tried one more deflection. Director Patel, you're cherry-picking one briefing and ignoring the broader intelligence picture. Am I? Let's talk about cherry-picking then. Let's talk about February 2018. The Nunes memo. Remember that Patel pulled out yet another stack of documents. How many did he have in that folder? How long had he been preparing for this? Congressman Nunes, who was then chairman of the House Intelligence Committee, released a memo documenting FBI and DOJ abuse of the FISA process in surveilling Carter Page. Do you remember your reaction to that memo, Senator? Of course, Schiff remembered. It had been one of his finest performances. righteous indignation, defending the FBI, calling Nunes reckless and partisan. I said the memo was misleading and dangerous. You said it was false. You released your own counter-memo saying Nunes had fabricated the allegations. You went on every cable news show for a week, saying he'd lied about what the FBI had done. Patel held up the Nunes memo in one hand. And then the Inspector General investigated. Did a comprehensive review of the FISA applications. Want to know what he found? He held up the IG report in his other hand. Quote, the Nunes memo was consistent with the underlying facts. The FBI did rely heavily on the Steele dossier in its FISA applications. The FBI did fail to adequately disclose the dossier's political origins. The FBI did continue surveillance even after the primary source was determined to be unreliable. End quote. He set both documents on the table. Nunes was right about everything. The FBI had abused the FISA process, had relied on a discredited dossier, had misled the FISA court. All the things Nunes said happened. The IG confirmed it. And you said he was lying. You released a memo saying he'd made it all up. You went on television and told the American people that the Nunes memo was false and misleading. Patel leaned forward. Were you lying, Senator, or were you just incompetent? Because those are the only two options. Either you knew Nunes was telling the truth, and you lied about it, or you didn't know, and you're not qualified to evaluate intelligence. Which is it? Schiff was trying to maintain his composure, but it was slipping. The IG report was more nuanced than you're representing. The IG found 17 separate errors and omissions in the FISA applications. 17. All of them favoring the FBI's ability to surveil. All of them exactly what Nunes had said happened. You had access to the same underlying intelligence he did. You knew he was right, but you told the public he was wrong. Why? Because the truth was politically inconvenient. Because admitting the FBI had abused its surveillance powers might help Trump. Is that why you lied? Schiff tried to fight back, tried to go on offense, but Patel wasn't done. Not even close. Let's talk about September 2019, the Ukraine whistleblower. And there it was. Schiff visibly flinched. This was his worst scandal, the one that had actually gotten him caught lying in real time. Patel pulled out more documents, phone logs, meeting records, timeline after timeline. September 17, 2019. You appear on MSNBC's Morning Joe. The host asks if you've had contact with the whistleblower. You say, and I quote, "We have not spoken directly with the whistleblower." He looked up. That was a lie, wasn't it? Senator, my staff had preliminary contact. I didn't personally. Your staff. Your staff that works for you, that reports to you, that coordinates with you on everything. That staff had multiple contacts with the whistleblower before the complaint was filed, helped him find a lawyer, helped him navigate the process, essentially coordinated the entire whistleblower complaint. Patel held up phone records. August 12, 2019. 43-minute phone call between the whistleblower and your staff director. August 14th, in-person meeting at your office. August 28th, 2nd meeting this time with your chief counsel present. The complaint was filed September 9th. You were asked about it on September 17th. And you said you hadn't had contact. That was a lie. He pulled out another document. This is the correction you had to issue through a spokesman after you got caught. Quote, the committee has had no contact with the individual. Except that was also a lie because your committee staff had extensive contact. Why lie about it, Senator? If the complaint was legitimate, why hide your involvement? Schiff had no good answer. He'd been caught at the time, admitted it through spokesman. But facing it again in this setting with Patel reading the timeline out loud, it was devastating. And then, Patel continued pulling out yet another document. There's what you did with the transcript itself. He held up a transcript of the Trump-Zelensky phone call. Next to it, a transcript of Schiff's opening statement at the impeachment inquiry. September 26, 2019. You opened the impeachment inquiry hearing. Do you remember what you said Schiff knew? Everyone knew. It had been played 1,000,000 times on conservative media. His fabrication. His parody. Patel read from the transcript of Schiff's statement. Quote, "And I'm going to say this only 7 times, so you better listen good. I want you to make up dirt on my political opponent, understand lots of it." End quote. He set down the paper. That's what you said. In your opening statement. At an impeachment inquiry. You made it up. Completely fabricated dialogue. Put it in the mouth of the President of the United States, and you read it into the congressional record as if it were real. The actual transcript of the call had been released that same morning. Your version bore no resemblance to it. You invented quotes, made up conversation, and when Republicans objected, you claimed it was parody. Patel pulled out both transcripts, put them side by side. Show me where they match, Senator. Show me anywhere in the real transcript where Trump says anything like what you claimed. Anywhere at all. Schiff couldn't, because there was nothing. He'd made it up. Whole cloth. Fiction read into the record of an impeachment inquiry. That's not parody, Senator. That's not artistic license. That's fabricating evidence. That's fraud. And you did it during an impeachment inquiry. You lied about what the president said in a proceeding to remove him from office. But Patel still wasn't done. There was more. There was always more with Schiff. October 2020. Hunter Biden's laptop. The laptop. The story that had been suppressed. The story that might have changed an election. The story that Schiff had helped kill. The New York Post breaks a story about Hunter Biden's laptop. Emails showing potential corruption. Influence peddling. Possible crimes. A major story 3 weeks before a presidential election. Patel pulled out another timeline. October 14th, 2020 Post breaks the story. October 15th, you appear on CNN. You're asked about the laptop. You say, quote, "We know that this whole smear on Joe Biden comes from the Kremlin." End quote. October 17th. You promote a letter signed by 51 former intelligence officials saying the laptop story has all the hallmarks of Russian disinformation. October 19th. You go on MSNBC and say the laptop is Russian disinformation 4 more times in one interview. He set down the timeline. There's one problem with all of that, Senator. The laptop was real. The FBI had verified it. The emails were authentic. The laptop had been in FBI custody since December 2019. They'd forensically examined it. They knew it was real. Patel pulled out FBI internal communications. And you'd been briefed on this. In classified settings. You knew the laptop was real. You knew the emails were authentic. The FBI had told you. And you went on television and called it Russian disinformation anyway. 3 weeks before an election, knowing it was a lie. He held up the letter from the 51 intel officials. This letter, the one signed by Brennan and Clapper and all the rest. You know who organized it, your staff. These are emails between your office and some of the signers, coordinating talking points, suggesting language. This wasn't an organic statement from concerned former officials. This was orchestrated. By you. And it worked, didn't it? Twitter banned the story, said it violated their hacked materials policy even though nothing was hacked. Facebook suppressed it, reduced its distribution by 95%. Legacy media called it Russian disinformation. All because you lied. Patel leaned back in his chair. The laptop was real, Senator. The FBI knew it. You knew it. And you told the American people it was Russian disinformation to influence an election. That's not oversight. That's propaganda. That's using your security clearance and your position to spread lies. The hearing room was in chaos now. Democrats calling for breaks. Republicans demanding Schiff answer the questions. Media frantically updating their stories. Social media completely on fire. But Patel wasn't paying attention to any of that. He was focused entirely on Schiff. And he had one more question, the question that would end it. He gathered up all the documents spread across the table. Steele dossier leaks, Russia collusion lies, Nunes memo falsehoods, whistleblower coordination, fabricated transcript, Hunter Biden laptop disinformation. Stacked them neatly, put them back in the red folder, closed it. Then he looked at Adam Schiff and asked the simplest, most devastating question possible. Senator Schiff, how many times have you lied to the American people using your security clearance as cover? The room went silent. 10 times, 100, 1,000. I've documented hundreds just in the materials I've shown today. But I know there are more. So how many times did you leak classified information to friendly reporters? How many times did you mischaracterize intelligence briefings to push a political narrative? How many times did you claim to have seen evidence that didn't exist? How many times did you coordinate with media to spread stories you knew were false? How many times did you use the phrase, "I've seen concerning intelligence I can't discuss," when what you'd actually seen was the opposite? Patel's voice wasn't raised, wasn't angry, just relentless. Question after question, each one landing like a hammer. You've spent 8 years positioning yourself as the defender of truth, the intelligence expert, the patriot standing up to authoritarianism. You've called other people liars, traitors, threats to national security. And the entire time you were the one lying. You were the one leaking. You were the one weaponizing classified information for political gain. You wrapped yourself in the flag while spreading propaganda. You claimed to protect sources and methods while burning them for partisan advantage. You accused others of the exact crimes you were committing. He leaned forward, his voice quiet now, almost sad. I've been in intelligence for 20 years, Senator. I've worked for both parties. I've seen good people make mistakes. I've seen classified information mishandled accidentally. I've seen judgment calls go wrong. But what you did wasn't mistakes. It wasn't accidents. It wasn't judgment calls. It was systematic, deliberate, strategic. You lied to the American people over and over and over again because you knew they couldn't check your work. The information was classified. Who could prove you wrong? Until now. Until someone declassified it all. Every leak. Every lie. Every manipulation. He pushed the red folder across the table toward Schiff. So, I'll ask you one more time, with all the evidence on the table, with 52 million people watching, with your entire career on the line, how many times did you lie to the American people, Senator Schiff? Adam Schiff stared at that red folder like it was a snake. His hands were shaking slightly. His face had gone through about 17 different colors in the last 90 minutes. He looked at his notes, looked at his staff in the gallery. They were frantically shaking their heads. Don't answer. Don't engage. Call for a break. He looked at the Democratic members of the committee. They were stone-faced, not defending him, not objecting, just sitting there, letting him drown. He looked at the cameras. at the 52 million people watching, at his career flashing before his eyes. And he had nothing. No answer. No defense. No clever dodge. No way out. Because Patel had the receipts. All of them. Declassified. Public record. Undeniable. Every leak traced to his phone records. Every lie contradicted by the actual briefings. Every fabrication exposed by the real documents. Every manipulation documented in emails and meeting logs. He'd spent 8 years lying because he thought he'd never be caught. Because the information was classified. Because nobody could prove him wrong. And Kash Patel had just proven him wrong. On live television. With documents. With timelines. With evidence that couldn't be argued with or spun away or dismissed as partisan attacks. Facts. Just facts. Brutal, undeniable, career-ending facts. Schiff opened his mouth, closed it, opened it again. Director Patel, I think you're mischaracterizing. Which document did I mischaracterize? Which timeline is wrong? Which phone record is fake? Which FBI finding is inaccurate? Silence. I've shown you evidence of leaks. You haven't denied them. I've shown you evidence of lies about Russia collusion. You haven't explained them. I've shown you evidence of coordinating with the whistleblower. You admitted it through spokesman. I've shown you evidence of fabricating transcripts and spreading disinformation about the laptop. All documented, all proven. So tell me which part I got wrong, Senator. Specifically. More silence. Longer this time. Because Schiff couldn't point to anything Patel had gotten wrong. It was all true. All documented. All real. Chairman Burr leaned into his microphone. Even he looked uncomfortable with how badly this was going. Senator Schiff, do you wish to respond to Director Patel's questions? Schiff took a long drink of water. His hand was shaking enough that some spilled. When he spoke, his voice had lost all its earlier confidence. All the gravitas. All the serious, concerned intelligence expert routine. Mr. Chairman, I believe this hearing has devolved into a political attack rather than legitimate oversight. I came here in good faith to discuss concerns about FBI leadership, and instead, I've been subjected to a coordinated smear campaign using selectively declassified materials. It was weak. Everyone in the room knew it. Schiff knew it. But it was all he had. I stand by my oversight work. I stand by my efforts to protect American democracy. And I will not be bullied by political appointees who are trying to rewrite history to serve partisan ends. He started gathering his papers, getting ready to leave, cut his losses, and get out. But Patel wasn't done. Senator, you're welcome to characterize this however you want. But before you go, I want to make one thing clear to everyone watching. He stood up, picked up the red folder. These documents will all be posted online within the hour. Every declassified page, every timeline, every piece of evidence. The American people can read them for themselves. They can see your phone records, your media appearances, the actual intelligence briefings compared to what you told the public. They don't have to take my word for it. They can see the receipts. He set the folder down gently. You spent 8 years lying because you thought people couldn't check your work. Now they can. All of it. Public record. Good luck explaining it. The next 2 hours were absolute chaos. Before Schiff had even left the building, clips were everywhere. Twitter, TikTok, YouTube, Reddit, Instagram, Facebook. Every platform simultaneously exploding. The calculator moment from the AOC hearing had gone viral. This was something else entirely. This was a systematic destruction of someone's entire career. Live, on camera, with documents. How many times have you lied to the American people, hit 68 million views in 90 minutes? The clip of Schiff's face when Patel pulled out the whistleblower documents hit 52 million. The side-by-side comparison of Schiff's fabricated transcript versus the real one hit 89 million by evening. Conservative media went nuclear. Schiff destroyed by declassified evidence. The liar exposed. 8 years of lies revealed in 90 minutes. They played the clips on loop. Every network, every show, every podcast. Liberal media tried to defend him. MSNBC ran with Patel's dangerous weaponization of declassification. CNN went with concerns mount over FBI director's political tactics. But even sympathetic analysts were struggling. Because the documents were real. The phone records were real. The timelines were real. The contradictions between what Schiff had been briefed on and what he'd told the public were undeniable. These documents are concerning, one CNN analyst admitted reluctantly. If the declassification was done properly, and it appears it was then some of Representative Schiff's past statements are difficult to square with what he actually knew. That was as close as CNN could get to saying Schiff had lied for 8 years. Social media was less diplomatic. Schiff lied trended #1 worldwide within 20 minutes. Receipts hit #3. Lying Schiff was #5. Even accounts that had defended Schiff for years were quiet. Or, worse, critical. I defended this man for 8 years, and he lied to us, got 400,000 likes. Schiff went on TV 227 times, claiming evidence of collusion that didn't exist. That's not oversight. That's propaganda. 260,000 likes. The fabricated transcript alone should end his career. He made up quotes during an impeachment inquiry. That's fraud. 390,000 likes. 90 minutes after the hearing ended, Schiff's office released a statement. It was long, defensive, filled with accusations of political persecution and selective declassification. Today's hearing was a politically motivated attack designed to distract from legitimate oversight concerns about FBI leadership. Director Patel engaged in a coordinated smear campaign using selectively declassified materials taken out of context. I stand by my oversight work protecting American democracy and will not be intimidated by those who seek to undermine our intelligence community for partisan purposes. It landed with a thud because Patel hadn't selectively declassified. He'd declassified everything. The full briefings, the complete timelines, the entire investigative reports, and he'd posted them all online like he'd promised. Anyone could read them. Anyone could compare what Schiff had been told versus what he'd told the public. Anyone could see the phone records and the media appearances and the pattern of leaks. The receipts were public. All of them. And they proved Patel right about everything. The first week after the hearing was a political bloodbath. The Los Angeles Times, which had endorsed Schiff for every race he'd ever run, published a devastating editorial. Senator Schiff owes California and the nation answers. They didn't call for his resignation, but they didn't defend him either. They just listed the accusations, noted he hadn't really denied them, and said voters deserved better. The San Francisco Chronicle was blunter. Schiff's credibility crisis. Their editorial board called the evidence troubling and suggested he consider whether he can continue to effectively represent California given the serious questions about his truthfulness. Republican House members called for the Justice Department to investigate Schiff for leaking classified information. Unlikely to go anywhere with the current DOJ, but it kept the story alive. More damaging was what happened in the Senate. The Senate Ethics Committee, without any prompting, announced they were opening a preliminary inquiry into Schiff's handling of classified information during his time in the House. That was the killer. Because ethics committee inquiries don't happen unless something serious is there. And this wasn't Republicans attacking. This was the Senate investigating one of its own. Polling started coming in by day 5. It was brutal. Schiff's approval rating in California had dropped from 58% to 31%. A 27-point collapse in 1 week. 72% of voters said they believed Schiff had lied to the public about classified information. 68% said he should resign from the Senate. Even among Democrats, only 44% approved of his job performance. Among independents, it was 19%. These weren't normal bad polls. These were career-ending numbers. By week 2, the primary challenger emerged. Katie Porter, progressive congresswoman from Orange County. Smart, tough, clean record. Her announcement video was clinical. Californians deserve senators who tell them the truth, who don't use classified information as a political weapon, who don't fabricate evidence, who don't leak to the media and then lie about it. Adam Schiff had a responsibility to be honest with the American people. The evidence shows he failed that responsibility, repeatedly, for years. I'm running because California deserves better. She raised $3.2 million in the first 72 hours, all small-dollar donations. The money poured in from progressives who felt betrayed, from independents who were disgusted, even from some Democrats who just wanted Schiff gone. Week 3 brought the Senate vote. Republicans forced it. A resolution to remove Schiff from the Intelligence Committee pending the ethics investigation. Democrats tried to block it, but 14 of them broke ranks. 14 Democrats voted with all the Republicans to strip Schiff of his committee assignment. The vote was 64 to 36. 14 Democrats. That was the number that told the story. When that many of your own party vote against you, you're done. They're not defending you. They're running away from you. They're making sure voters know they didn't protect you. Schiff gave a defiant speech on the Senate floor, talked about political persecution, about standing up to authoritarianism, about not being intimidated. But his voice shook, and nobody applauded. And when he finished, senators from both parties just quietly left the chamber. It was over. Everyone knew it. By month, 2 more documents came out. Patel had declassified additional materials showing an 8-year pattern of leaks. Meeting after meeting where Schiff had been briefed. Media appearance after media appearance where he'd mischaracterized what he'd been told. The pattern was undeniable, systematic, deliberate, strategic. He hadn't made mistakes. He'd run a propaganda operation, using his security clearance as both weapon and shield. By month 6, Adam Schiff held a press conference in Los Angeles, announced he would not seek re-election. He framed it as wanting to focus on fighting disinformation and protecting democracy. Everyone knew the truth. He was going to lose the primary. Badly. Better to quit than face that humiliation. Katie Porter won the primary unopposed, went on to win the general election by 18 points. Adam Schiff, who'd spent 8 years as one of the most prominent Democrats in America, who'd been on cable news seemingly every night, who'd led impeachment inquiries and Russia investigations, and positioned himself as the defender of truth and democracy, left the Senate in disgrace, exposed as a liar, a leaker, a man who'd weaponized classified information for partisan gain. And all because he'd decided to attack Kash Patel. All because he thought he could use the same playbook that had worked for 8 years. All because he didn't realize that this time someone had declassified the receipts. 6 months after the hearing, Kash Patel gave a speech at the FBI Academy in Quantico. He was talking to new agent recruits about ethics and integrity in law enforcement. Inevitably, someone asked about the Schiff hearing. "Sir, did you feel bad exposing him like that?" In public, Patel was quiet for a moment, thinking about how to answer. "No, I didn't feel bad. He spent 8 years lying to the American people, using his security clearance as a weapon, leaking classified information to damage political opponents, fabricating evidence during an impeachment inquiry, spreading disinformation to influence an election. Someone had to stop it. Someone had to show people what he really was. I just declassified the documents and let the truth speak. He destroyed himself. I just provided the platform." Another recruit raised her hand. "But wasn't it risky using declassification that way? Some people said you were weaponizing your authority." Patel shook his head. "Sunlight is the best disinfectant. Schiff's entire operation depended on secrecy, on people not being able to check his claims because the information was classified. I didn't weaponize anything. I brought transparency. I let the American people see what their representative had actually been briefed on versus what he told them. That's not weaponization. That's accountability. If the truth destroys you, the problem isn't the truth. The problem is you." One more question. "Do you think he learned anything?" Patel smiled slightly, the same slight smile he'd had during the hearing. "I think America learned something. That's what mattered." What did they learn? That when someone tells you they've seen classified evidence you can't see, be skeptical. Ask for proof. Ask for specifics. Don't just trust them because they have a clearance, and you don't. Because sometimes the person claiming to protect you from threats is actually the threat. Sometimes the person wrapping themselves in the flag is the one burning it. Sometimes the liar is the one calling everyone else a liar. He gathered his notes, got ready to leave. Adam Schiff spent 8 years thinking he was untouchable, that he could lie forever because nobody could prove him wrong. But the truth doesn't stay buried forever. Eventually, someone digs it up. I just happened to have a shovel and the authority to use it. A year after the hearing, the political landscape looked different. The Schiff hearing had become a case study. Law schools taught it in ethics classes. Consequences of misusing classified information. Intelligence agencies used it in security training. What not to do with your clearance. Congressional committees were more careful about what they said in public, more aware that everything they claimed to know in secret might someday be declassified, more hesitant to make accusations they couldn't prove. The era of "I've seen concerning intelligence I can't discuss" was over. People demanded receipts now. Real receipts. Not "trust me." Not sources and methods. Actual evidence. Adam Schiff had effectively disappeared from public life. No cable news appearances, no op-eds, no speeches. He'd taken a position at some think tank that nobody had ever heard of, making decent money, staying quiet. His Wikipedia page now led with the hearing, the lies, the leaks, the declassified documents. 8 years of prominence reduced to a cautionary tale about hubris and accountability. And Kash Patel was still FBI director, still doing the job, still fighting corruption, still declassifying documents when he thought the public deserved to know the truth. He didn't talk about the Schiff hearing much. Didn't need to. The documents spoke for themselves. The truth spoke for itself. Because at the end of the day, that's what had destroyed Adam Schiff. Not political attacks, not partisan warfare, not some vast right-wing conspiracy. The truth. Simple. Documented. Declassified truth. The truth that he'd lied, that he'd leaked, that he'd manipulated, that he'd used his security clearance to spread propaganda while accusing others of exactly what he was doing. The truth that he'd spent 8 years playing a game he thought he'd mastered. I know things you don't know. Trust me, they're very concerning. I'd tell you, but it's classified. And then someone called his bluff. Someone with the authority to declassify. Someone with the patience to compile 8 years of evidence. Someone who knew that sometimes the best way to fight a liar is just to show everyone the receipts. That's what Kash Patel had done. In 90 minutes, on live television, with 52 million people watching. He'd shown them the receipts, and the receipts told the story of a man who'd lied for so long he'd forgotten people could eventually check his work, who'd wrapped himself in the flag while betraying the trust it represented, who'd called himself a defender of truth while spreading lies, who'd positioned himself as a patriot while putting partisan politics above national security. The story of Adam Schiff, intelligence expert, defender of democracy, champion of truth, liar, leaker, fraud. The receipts didn't lie. They never do. And on that Tuesday afternoon in March, with the whole country watching, they told the truth about a man who'd spent 8 years lying. Sometimes that's all you need. Not speeches, not rhetoric, not moral arguments, just receipts and sunlight, and the willingness to show people what their representatives have really been doing. That's what ended Adam Schiff's career. Not political warfare, not partisan attacks, just the truth. Finally declassified. Finally public. Finally undeniable. The liar met the receipts, and the receipts won.